Welcome to a ride on the outside. MMA is full of people on the inside, but what about the ones that watch from beyond? Welcome to the MMA Outsiders with Tom Albano and Zain Bando on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network.
Yes, the MMA Outsiders is here. Apologies for the delay, but finally, we've got episode 41. We've had a controversial split decision that we need to talk about. We have more Dana White comments that we need to talk about. We've got a UFC pay-per-view card this weekend, Zain, although it doesn't feel like a pay-per-view card kind of week.
No, it certainly does not, and I think it goes to show that sometimes there's a thing called a dead period in MMA, and even though we don't have a dead period this week, it very much feels like one of those weeks where it's like it's a lull. There's nothing to really get too excited about, but there's still fights to talk about, so we still have to cover them as we always do on this show. It just happens to be that UFC 289 is not getting as much love as it normally does. Before we get into all of that, though, be sure to like and subscribe to the Empty the Bench Podcast Network, and be sure to follow the MMA Outsiders across social media at MMA Outsiders ETB. My name is Zain Bando. You can find my work over at bjpen.com. I'm a staff writer there as well as part of the Bellator Rankings panel. You will find me sitting cage side next week for Bellator 297 at Wintrust Arena in Chicago. And then, of course, to my left is my co-host, Tom Oben. I know he does great work over at Fansided MMA as a contributor there, and he will also be starting his role with the PFL beginning tonight with the second half of the PFL season, and doing some stuff for the website. So a lot of stuff going on with us in terms of outside of the MMA Outsiders podcast and in our own MMA ventures. So we appreciate all of you guys who tune in every week, and also be sure to check out our live reaction streams that we do every Tuesday, recapping every episode of The Ultimate Fighter, Team McGregor versus Team Chandler, of course. Tom, even though we have a light week, it still feels like we have a lot to get to, doesn't it? Tom, even though we have a light week.
Yeah, absolutely. Still plenty that we got to get through. Some major headlines that happened this past weekend. Some pretty interesting fights. As you mentioned last weekend, it was the first flyweight main event for the UFC. For men's flyweight in about 6 or so years. We had more comments from Dana White, and then there's a couple other little news fronts in terms of fights. And yes, I start with the PFL tonight. I cannot wait. I am so hyped. I am honored to be a part of, a contributor to a major MMA organization, especially one that's been in the news quite a bit as of late. So we will get to that. We will get to this UFC pay-per-view card in just a little bit. Let's start, Zain. Let's just quickly go over this past weekend. So Amir Albazi got the split decision win over Kai Kara France. A major, major controversy, however, when it comes to the judging. And Zain, this feels like the third time in about 5 or 6 weeks where we've had a fight, and it all ends with some form of controversy in terms of judging. I mean, you think back, Zain, to the Henry Cejudo Aljamain Sterling fight, in which you had one scorecard for one round that was scored in favor of Sterling, which clearly was a more Cejudo round in the eyes of many, that if you had flipped it, Cejudo would have won the Bantamweight Championship on a split decision. And then there was the fight just a couple of weeks ago with Vasyl Lomachenko and Devin Haney, which Haney won a unanimous decision, but then you saw one scorecard where rounds 8 through 10 were scored in favor of Haney, and that was egregious. So it should have been not a unanimous decision, but a split decision, which should mean you should have run that fight back. But I don't know if boxing is going to do that, because boxing is going to boxing. And now here we are, where another controversial decision, Zain, where one round was scored in the fight in a completely questionable manner that, if it had been scored correctly, would have been flipped to the other guy.
Yeah, the one thing you left out of your explanation is the biggest common denominator out of all of these, And to me, the biggest common denominator out of all of the examples you just mentioned are actually two things. One is that you had in one of the three decisions, you had the New Jersey State Athletic Commission involved, and in the other two, you had the Las Vegas. You had NSAC involved, and those are two of the oldest athletic commissions in the sport, and they both have had their own triumphs and tribulations as well as flaws as of late. And those are just three examples of those commissions being on the wrong side of history. And Albazi versus Carter France, remind you, Carter France versus Albazi, we have to get the order right here, is another one of those egregious decisions where the judges that were involved, specifically Chris Lee in particular, was on the wrong side of history in this fight. And we'll get into more of why in a little bit, but I just find it interesting how New Jersey and Nevada, again, bad decisions get in their own way that they now have to sit and sulk in, basically.
And not just that, Zan, not just that, but also the fact that you mentioned it's Chris Lee, the Loma and Haney fight. That was Dave Moretti. These are not newbie judges who are new to the main event scene and the championship scene. These are judges that we have seen consistently in main events, very highly experienced judges who are getting these kinds of things wrong.
Yeah, very highly experienced judges that have been around for a long time. And I really think it's just a matter of a lack of carelessness or not really fully understanding or remembering what the new unified rules of MMA bring. Like I don't really know what it is. Like, are they judging on a criteria that we don't know about, or are they like half watching the fight? Like it's very interesting. I mean, the most telling stat for sure in round 4 was 27-5 in the significant strike category. The most egregious part of this decision, in my opinion, is specifically in round 4, which to me was the most dominant round for KKF, and without a doubt, I think the round that should have solidified him the victory, given that his significant strike count was 27-5. I think that statistic alone, right there, that earned him the decision. I mean, you want to talk about a dominant round. Round 4 was as dominant as you could possibly get in a fight that was pretty close to the first 3 rounds.
And that's the thing, Zan. I thought, everyone's saying, oh, the fight wasn't even close. I disagree on that comment. I thought the fight was close. I just don't know about that 4th round. Now, maybe I got to go back and rewatch it. But on that 4th round, I had it for Cara France, and I had Cara France winning on a decision. And Zan, you want to talk about how one scorecard made such a major impact. According to Kai Cara France on Ariel Helwani's show, Kai Cara France supposedly lost $100,000 in fighter pay as a result of that one controversially scored round.
Yeah, not only that, not only is he the biggest loser in this whole equation, but the biggest winner might be Brandon Royval. What do you think?
Yeah, I could see it. I think Royval now has the opportunity to quickly get himself right back into the title contention. I mean, Royval is a very dangerous force at flyweight. I was advocating for him, Zan, when the UFC was starting to rebuild its flyweight division around the time that the 2020s had started. And now here he is, ranked as a flyweight, impressed very early on in his debut. I think that was in 2020. And he has consistently been around the top or middle of the flyweight rankings. And now it's KKF, as you kind of alluded to, Zan, who's the biggest loser, but Brandon Royval, perhaps the biggest winner. And even Amir Albazi, now obviously saying that is quite much of a duh moment, saying that Albazi is a big winner here. But the point being that, and we kind of alluded to it last week, Zan, this was Albazi's toughest test. This was his highest ranked fighter. And here he is getting this win, very controversial win, but a win is a win.
Yeah, a win is a win in MMA for sure. But one thing I think you have to keep in mind is, now if this fight teaches us anything, or rather taught us anything. It goes back to the old adage of you don't leave it in the hands of the judges because you don't know. And especially at the UFC Apex, this is now another instance of a decision that a lot of people disagreed with. A lot of MMA media, a lot of MMA fans, a lot of MMA purists. And it's just something that, you have to keep tabs on. But in 2023, Tom, with all of the technology that there is and instant replay and the added benefit of AI becoming really smart now and stuff, and just having so many resources available, you would think the judges would have a lot easier of a time in scoring some of these fights. I mean, it's going to go back to the idea I proposed about a year ago. I don't know if I've said it on this show yet, but if I haven't, I will. I think all three judges need to sit in a private box, glassed enclosed type of space where they're watching the fights on a monitor and they're hearing the commentators, but they're away from the fans. They're away from the outside world. They're watching it in a glassed enclosed environment where they're not seeing the crowd. They're not influenced by the crowd. They're just watching the screens and doing their job and watching the fight for what it is and not worrying about other distractions.
Zan, yeah, I've seen that theory out there, floated out there over the last year plus, and you would think, Zan, for that's such a simple solution for 2023 standards for judging. That would be such a simple solution, just in an isolated box, soundproof. But for whatever reason, you just don't do it. And Zan, this stretches back to what I talked about not too long ago. We were talking about the Lomachenko Haney controversial decision that you can, we can say, oh, let's have open scoring, let's do this, let's do that. But ultimately, Zan, it's a commission problem. It's not even a promotion problem. It's a commission problem because these are the commissions, where is it that judges are held responsible? Where is it that these judges are to be, reviewed and such? It has to take a great amount of uproar for something like that to happen, and even then, sometimes it doesn't happen. So if the commissions are just sitting back here, just saying, "Oh, I'm just gonna relax," or if they're trying to do the whole, hear no evil, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil kind of vibe, or they're just, hey, he or she just had a really bad day. Like, as long as that keeps going in, and then I if the commissions don't do anything, then this problem is still gonna go on 2023, 2024, 2025 until God knows when.
Yeah, I'm going to make an analogy. You obviously don't live in the state of Illinois like I do, but a big problem at the high school level is the lack of referee experience. There's so much criticism at the high school level with football and basketball games being decided by the referees, and I feel like you're in sort of a high school state almost with MMA where you have all these benefits. You have instant replay for fouls, like why not use any of this stuff when the NBA and the NFL and all of these other sports are on the cutting edge of making sure that the games are officiated fairly? Why are we not doing the same thing with fights? Why is open scoring, not being used in other territories? And why is it that Mike Mazzulli, someone in such a high position of power, goes on Aaron Bronstedter's show and literally criticizes the fans for being judgmental towards the judges when this, quite frankly, is a weekly occurrence? We spend our hard-earned money and time, sometimes several thousands of dollars, depending on who you are, to watch these events. And when you don't have proper judging in place, I think from a fan or media member's perspective, you have a right to be upset because this is supposed to be the biggest MMA promotion in the world, the UFC, the gold standard. And when you don't have the proper judging in place, it gets you frustrated. And I'd actually have to disagree to counter argue his point. There are people who don't want to watch the sport anymore for exactly those reasons. They don't want to see male or female fighters' careers get ruined because of a bunch of judges who, quite frankly, more than likely 80% of them, I would guess, have never trained in the discipline before. So to me, his convoluted not backwards thinking, but his one-sided thinking, I think, is just old school, and I think it makes the whole operation look bad, in my opinion.
And again, Zan, you talk about it in the way like I mean, I go back to the point, whether it's open scoring, whether it's the isolation boxes or anything, or even just holding the judges accountable. All of that has to start with the commission. Everything, and I'm gonna throw it way back, but in the old podcast I used to do with Nick Morrison before Empty the Bench, and we were talking about, Conor McGregor after he threw the dolly through the bus window, and we were like, and he was talking about, oh, it's too far and something has to be done. And I told it to him then. Everything starts with the commission. If the commission isn't gonna do anything, then what will? And Mike Mazzulli is just proving through his comments why everyone is just left with sour taste in their mouth when it comes to the commission, whether it's a newer kind of commission for a sport of mixed martial arts like New York, or whether you're a long-term essential founding member for the the modern unified rules of mixed martial arts, say New Jersey or Nevada.
100%. And you probably feel the same way towards me, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I've never met Mike Mazzulli. I've never spoken to him, but I have so many questions as to why he still believes in the way that he does, because assuming he watches the sport as much as we do, like, how is he not seeing these issues as like consistent issues, to where if they're not fixed, these things are going to keep happening over and over and over again, and you keep having this convoluted mindset of, oh, judges are going to mess up, and oh, judges are going to make mistakes, and all of you guys being critical towards the judges doesn't help the sport. I'm sorry, but I think every single person who follows MMA or boxing or some sort of combat sport somewhere around the world wants to see the sport be as successful as possible. And you don't have the resources in place to make it as successful as possible, you're gonna get a lot of people upset. And I don't think that's what he's fully coming to grips with. It's 2023. This isn't 2003. This isn't 2006. We're not trying to get this sport sanctioned in 50 states. It's a well-established sport. Fix the problem, otherwise you're going to keep losing more people. And to be quite frank, that interview to me just shows that if someone 20 years younger was in his same position, or someone who's even my age, or quite frankly your age, that maybe has 15 or 16 years of MMA viewing experience, if you get a younger person in there that's seen a lot of these decisions, they might have a different perspective versus a guy who's been around for 40 years and has seen too many fights to where he can't even keep them straight. So you see where I'm getting at there?
Yes, so much. Yeah, and Zan, I don't know how to follow that up, because you've completely stated the whole point that judging the fact it is still a problem. To answer the question, yes, and it's kind of ridiculous that it's still a problem in 2023. Now, that's not to say judging is an exact science. I'm not going to stand here and say, oh, because of the significant strike totals, Kai Car-Fran's completely won. Obviously, there's more to it than that with the scoring system, with the whole scoring methods of effective striking. What is effective striking to one person, or effective grappling to another person? Zan, I'm of the opinion that the 10-point must system is completely outdated and inappropriate for MMA, but I think that's a whole other conversation. But again, everything we're talking about here stems from that one fact that if the commissions don't care and the commissioner acts way like Mike Mazzulli is acting, nothing's going to get done.
Yeah, and we could scream into our computers and tablets all day, but until there's something done about it, nothing is going to happen. In terms of what is next for both men, what do you do with KKF after a crushing defeat like this one, in your opinion?
He fell down to number 5 in the UFC flyweight rankings, but Zan, you can't penalize the guy. Like, in my opinion, he shouldn't lose much stock after a fight like that. And it's kind of maybe a little insulting that he fell down to number 5. Credit, although granted, like we mentioned, Brandon Royval, big win for him technically. So if you're Kai Kara France, I mean, I still want to give him some form of top name. So I mean, the lowest I would go, Zan, is for KKF somebody like an Alex Perez or a Matt Schnell. Uh, and in terms of what you do for Amir Albazi, I mean, if Vicky is staying at flyweight, I mean, Albazi's now number 3. Do you give him a number 1 contenders fight with Vicky?
I mean, it doesn't hurt, but still, you'd be rewarding a guy who lost the fight, but you're saying in the eyes of the rankings that he technically won. I'm not sure if that's the best approach, in my opinion.
I just don't know. I just don't know if you can give KKF a big drop in competition. I mean, that's why I said I wouldn't go lower than him facing maybe number 8 in Matt Schnell or maybe Manel Kopp, but I don't want to judge on Kopp just yet, considering I don't want to judge on Kopp just yet, considering what else we got going on in this division.
That makes perfect sense. So then I guess another question that I have for you is, um, I mean, why do you think the UFC has been so nonchalant about this decision, in your opinion?
Because then it's the flyweights. Simple.
Yeah, yeah, that's well said. I mean, if the flyweights aren't going to sell tickets, they're not going to talk about it, right? So, I totally understand. Nonetheless, though, Amir Albazi, if you didn't know what his name was
Sell
before,
tickets. Wait, Zan, sell tickets.
go ahead.
Zan, sell tickets. They were at the freaking Apex.
Well, they did technically sell tickets at $1,600 a pop. So there you go.
Dana White and a Dana White. We'll get to Dana White in just a little bit, but I want to focus first. We need to mention Claressa Shields, who got a one-sided decision win, retained her undisputed middleweight title against Maricela Cornejo. And Zan, I mean, one-sided is just the only way that you can really describe this fight. It was not even close in the slightest.
I think that's the understatement of the year when it comes to this show, my friend. This was a absolute masterclass by the Michigan native. And Tom, let me tell you what, I was low key jealous that I wasn't at Little Caesars Arena, because that looked like the biggest party in Michigan in quite some time. And Claressa Shields just put on a masterclass performance, and it was very impressive to see. And it's good to see the Midwest get a huge name in a big fight on DAZN. And I think it went as well as DAZN could have hoped it would have went, and it did.
For sure. But now it makes you question, Zan. I mean, what do you do with Claressa Shields next? Well, if you're Claressa Shields, are you going to do another boxing fight, or are you going to do talks with PFL again or something? Or who do we get next for a middleweight title challenger? Because, I mean, how many of these one-sided decisions are we going to go through?
I think MMA is her next logical step. She wants to stay active. She's basically cleaned out the division. I don't see how that would be a knock on her. I think that's what she should do.
For sure. I mean, I know she had a couple of fights with PFL already, ended up dropping one, had a comeback performance, comeback victory in another. I just think, San, that with somebody like Claressa Shields, at the state that we're going in, I mean, if we want to promote her like a Katie Taylor or Amanda Serrano, then we can't just do these one-sided decisions over and over and over again. That's why I liked when she had dipped her toes into the MMA water, because it was so different, and we could promote her on another level.
Yeah, and given how much news the PFL has generated in the last several months, I think it would stir the pot even more. Like, it would make more people start talking about them.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's get off of this topic, Zan. Let's go from the recaps over to the news elements here. Just a few headlines to go through. So, Zan, I keep trying, I know your take on the whole Francis Ngannou thing, the whole story about him going to PFL and such, and I keep trying and trying to go over to your side and get the understanding of, what Francis is doing. It's a loss for him, and it's a big risk and such. But then Dana White just continues to open his mouth and dig a hole even further. Because now, at the post fight press conference for UFC Vegas 74,
which I might,
here's Dana White at the podium.
Which I might add didn't even air live. It aired afterward because all the outlets got it up. So when it started to get out there that he said this, people didn't believe any of the media members that were there. It was absurd.
It was absolutely absurd. Where, if you didn't know what he said, there it is right there at the bottom of the screen. Dana White said, "How about Tyson Fury? You come over here and you fight Jon Jones, essentially for the heavyweight championship in the UFC. Zain, we don't do gimmick fights around here." And the only thing I have to say to that, Mr. White, is where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Ah, here it is.
Why the fuck you lying? Why you always lying? Oh my God. Stop fucking lying.
Exhibit A, Randy Couture versus James Toney, UFC 118, August of 2010. You want to talk about gimmick fights? This is another gimmick fight in a very short list that the UFC is attempting to quote-unquote make. So stupid. Tom, you and I both know how this would go.
Yes, and that's my concern, Zain. That is exactly my concern, is that this would turn into another Toney versus Couture, in which Jon Jones would just use his grappling, and it would end up just like Jones versus Gane did back in March. The fight, Zain, the fact that Fury is a boxer, and we have seen Jon Jones with his striking, the fight with these two should be in the boxing ring. And let alone, Zain, the fact that here you are Dana White, and you're saying this after pretty much knocking the PFL for allowing Francis Ngannou to go off and do boxing, after knocking Francis Ngannou and PFL and talking about, a Francis versus Tyson Fury fight and how it might not be possible. And now you want to do it for Jon Jones. Now, the Jon Jones Fury thing about, again, we talked about it last week or so ago, Zain, about Jon Jones and his tenure in MMA versus Francis Ngannou. That's one thing. But when you combine that, Zain, also mentioning from 2 weeks ago, the fact that we had that bloody elbow report come out where the revenue for UFC fighters, how much they earn from the shared revenue was basically here. I don't think Dana White is putting himself in a very positive light at this point.
No, but Tom, let's also look at it from the other side. Do you think Dana White really cares what light he's putting himself in? The man is worth over $300 million. Do you think at this point in his career that Mr. Bulkhead even remotely cares what he's putting himself into? For crying out loud, they're going to air Power Slap 3 the night before the UFC 290. He's more excited about that than UFC 290. You want to talk about gimmicks? I I feel when I'm joking with him about Power Slap. And you want to talk about more gimmicks? That's the biggest gimmick of them all, minus a potential Tyson Fury versus Jon Jones fight. Are you kidding me?
No, Zain. I'll one up it. You want to know what a true gimmick fight is? You know what probably is Dana's wet dream of a gimmick fight? Jon Jones versus Tyson Fury in Power Slap for the BMF title.
Yeah, knowing Dana White, he'll probably try to make that.
It's just hypocrisy everywhere. But like you said, Zain, he doesn't care. And guess what? That actually furthers my point in the first story about the whole judging thing, because he don't care, commission don't care. Zain, it's just a whole world of IDC.
Yeah, and even you could go as far as saying IDGAF, which I won't repeat on this program, but it's the same difference.
Same difference, absolutely. Dana also making headlines, and last week for another comment he made during that post-fight conference. Jared Gordon, for the record, for those who don't know, was supposed to fight Jim Miller. Obviously, Jim Miller getting the huge quick first round finish on his path to being at UFC 300, which, San, at this rate, you might as well make him like the co-main event or the first featured bout of the UFC 300 card at the rate he's going. But nonetheless, Jared Gordon was supposed to fight. Now, he was knocked out about 6 or so weeks before, and it was a kind of a quick turnaround, and Jared Gordon making mention of some potential issues going on with his head, potential, hinting at some potential concussion issues or concussion recovery issues, and he was basically pulled less than a week's notice, and Dana White basically ripped him a new one, which actually sparked, Zan, a whole bunch of controversy and discussion on the Twitterverse about this quote as well. I think it was Mookie Alexander who pointed out, Zan, we've talked about, hey, ever since 2020, commissions have not released any fight person information. Well, Zan, around the time since then, have we even gotten any medical information of late? Because I don't seem to recall that much.
The answer to that question with 100% confidence is no.
So at this point, Dana White should just shut his mouth, because it's just, I understand. Yes, I mean, Jared Gordon is showing some fault here in that, why are you taking a fight on 6 weeks notice after these kinds of issues? But if you're Dana White and the UFC and Sean Shelby and said, why are you offering a fight to a guy who was just knocked out 6 or so weeks ago? Again, this is 2023. We have more scientific information about the head injuries and the effects of this sport and such, than 2003. Why are you doing this?
Because they simply don't care. That's all it is. They don't care.
I guess, again, IDC, IDJAF. I don't know what much more you can really say about.
But I have a different take on this. I think Dana is more bitter, and I said this on Twitter after the fight. I think he's more bitter because he's buddies with Jared Gordon. That Jared Gordon didn't get a chance to fight. Do we really think that as much as Dana White says he cares about health and fighter safety, he didn't care about health and fighter safety? He's more mad, in my opinion, that his buddy didn't fight. That's what I think.
Yeah, I could see Dana White being very, very full of salt here. And I don't know, the way Dana came off this weekend, Zan, all I can say is,
oh, brother, this guy stinks!
No kidding.
All right. Want to also make mention of, Zan, a little bit of news that's actually we can talk about here because it's kind of breaking, considering, we're recording now on the Wednesday night, airing for the Thursday morning, Zan. So we have some information now about the Bellator Rizin 2 crossover event. So, Zan, here's where it gets interesting. Bellator's portion of the card will air first, and it will air live on Showtime. Because of that, Zan, it's July 30th over in Japan, which means it's July 29th over here. So that means Bellator Rizin 2 crossover event will be going head-to-head with UFC 291 and Crawford versus Spence. All I can say to that, Zan, is this.
Oh my God!
Yeah, no kidding. I don't think that was the smartest business decision. And granted, I'm saying this full disclosure as a part of the rankings panel. I'm not trying to lose a position or anything. I'm just being genuinely honest. I do not think this was the smartest decision, unless this was the only thing Showtime was allowed to do.
Well, here's my thing, Zan. I think if you say that, it's a little hypocritical, considering last week we were just talking about how the whole idea that we were ripping on them for Bellator Rizin crossover 1 in which they didn't air it live. They aired it on tape delay, and we said that basically Bellator had to basically cut the crap on that. Unfortunately, they managed to pick a weekend that's going to be super busy. Now, I should also make mention before we get more into this conversation, the RIZIN portion of the card will not air on Showtime. Showtime will only show the Bellator portion. So that means after AJ McKee versus Patricky Pitbull, if you want to see the RIZIN portion of the card that features Juan Archuleta and others, you'll have to watch it in the normal way that you would watch a RIZIN show.
Right, which is through internet pay-per-view.
So, I mean, you got to give Bellator some credit, though, that they did at least listen to the fans, and we get to see some of this live.
So that means, Tom, that leads me to my next question. What will you watch on Saturday, July 29th?
Is it possible to have 3 screens going?
I mean, you could. It's a matter of your setup. That's what I would think.
I'm gonna try to find a way to keep track of all 3 cards going at once, because this is a weekend, Zan, that you can't miss out. I think, Zan, July 29th through 30th is it's fight heaven.
Yeah, it's fight heaven as ever. And no matter if you go to Crawford Spence, UFC 291, or somehow the Bellator card, you'll get your money's worth.
For sure. And Zan, that's not the only thing. On July 29th, Zan, OKTAGON will have OKTAGON 45, and that will feature, Zan, the bout between your boy Losene Keita and Mate Sanikidze for the undisputed featherweight title. Interim champ versus the full-on champ for the undisputed title, Zan. So this is a fight we've long been waiting for. You interviewed Losene for this fight originally before it ended up getting postponed, supposedly due to an injury to Mate, and now here we are. Zan, you better have some popcorn ready, because I see you basically just strapping in and watching combat sports all day, which I might be in that same boat with you.
Oh, I'm very much looking forward to it. It's just a matter of no hints or secrets revealed yet. It's just a matter of what event I will be at this weekend, or will do my absolute best to be at this weekend to make it even a little bit more special. But thankfully, Keita versus Sanikidze will air in the afternoon, so I will be just fine.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Zan, let's get into the big one. Zan, it feels disappointing that there's a UFC card this weekend. You know, it's also the end of the school year, work school year for me. And, this is supposed to be a UFC card to, celebrate the end of that, and it's just, there's only one fight that I'm looking forward to, really, on this card.
Yeah, and it's the end of the quarter for me with graduate school, and it's also my graduation ceremony this weekend. And like you just said, there's only one fight that we can really look forward to on the combat sports calendar, and that is Charles Oliveira versus Beneil Dariush, which is the co-main event of UFC 289 in Vancouver.
Yes, but first we gotta get to the main event, San. Amanda Nunes versus Irene Aldana, women's bantamweight championship on the line. San, my question to you quite simply is, I know Juliana Pena proved that Amanda Nunes can be beaten, but the way the second fight went, Zan, I consider that more of a, one-time upset. So, Zan, I ask you, how bad is Amanda Nunes going to bloody up Irene Aldana?
I think it's going to be pretty bad, and I think, like I alluded to on the MMA Power Hour Twitter Spaces that aired now 2 days ago, or less than 2 days ago, I think Nunes finishes her in the 4th round with a late TKO stoppage or submission. I think Aldana hangs in there, but she gasses late and loses the fight.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you, Zan. I think Aldana could hang in there for some time, but around late 3rd round, early 4th round, I see this one being done. Zan, if somehow this one goes to the judges, I see this worse, Zan, than her title defense almost 3 years ago to this very day when she defended the featherweight championship, Zan, in which, Zan, I say that the scorecards for Nunes Aldana, if this goes the distance, will read 50-43, and Zan, I even think there's a shot of a 50-42. This one, no disrespect to Aldana. Aldana absolutely talented, but will not be even close.
Agreed. I could very well see a 50-42. I could even see a 50-44. So you never know.
Yeah. This is the fight, Zan, that it's just a matter of, wanting to see Nunes and how she beats up another challenger and how badly she does at this point.
So do you think, Tom, that if Nunes wins, Nunes versus Pena, UFC 300 is the fight to make?
In the words of Booker T, tell me you didn't just say that.
I sure did.
How about we actually do something with that featherweight championship for once?
I know. It may, by the time the UFC featherweight title is defended, I will somehow, some way be a UFC rankings panelist. Somehow, some way.
Rankings panelists, like those even exist?
No kidding. Shout out to Jedi Goodman for that.
All right. Let's talk about Zan now. The real main event of this evening, the people's main event. Charles Oliveira versus Beneil Dariush.
I mean, let's face it, you have a former lightweight champion versus a rising contender that's taken over the division by storm in the last 3 years. This is one of those fights where there's no way it's going to be boring. There's no way it's going the distance. And it's a win and you get a title shot scenario, in my opinion. There's no way Oliveira loses. I think he's just too hungry. I think he dominates Dariush, and I think he finishes him in the mid-second round.
This is going to be quite the comeback fight for Oliveira after losing his championship on the scales and then losing to Islam Makhachev. And Zan, I 100% agree with you because they've now booked Poirier Gaethje 2 and they booked Chandler against Conor McGregor, which, let me clear, they booked him against Conor McGregor. We still, it's June 7th and we still have no true official information. Maybe it's going to be that December 16th card in Las Vegas now, supposedly. But, I mean, it's just an absolute frustration at this point with that fight. But yes, it seems like based on those factors considered, it seems like the winner of this fight between Oliveira and Dariush is probably going to meet Islam Makhachev in the main event of the UFC pay-per-view in October in Abu Dhabi. That being said, I mean, I think Oliveira, I think this one could actually be a pretty pure grappling kind of. I shouldn't say pure grappling, but I could see, Zan, where we've got quite a few grappling exchanges in which it's going to be a matter of, Zan, who's going to get the first takedown early. I think that's what ultimately it's going to come down to with each round. Who's going to be the first to get their opponent to the ground? And if you're Charles Oliveira and you get taken down, how quickly can you get back up? How quickly can you lock on one of those submissions like you did triangle choke Kevin Lee? I'm going to lean with you, Zan. I am going to say Charles Oliveira, but if he loses to Beneil Dariush, it's not the worst kind of loss, but then that means losing your title on the scales and then losing back-to-back fights. That's not going to be a good look for Oliveira.
Yeah, and I actually think the loser of this fight is going to fight the loser McGregor Chandler, presuming it happens. That's what I think.
I could very well see that. I think that's perfect. All right. The rest of this card, Zan. The rest of this card, I need a sound effect for it. Hold on a minute. Oh, I got it.
And all the failure.
I got another one. No disrespect to the other fighters there, but just
flush it down the toilet, 100%.
I mean, this is the fight before the co-main event. Mike Mallet versus Adam Fugit.
Yeah, Mike Malott doesn't win this fight in front of his hometown. There's going to be a lot of angry people that night. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Mike Mike Malott at this point, just because, like you said, it's a hometown guy, and if he doesn't win, ah. I feel bad, Zan. I feel really bad for this next fight because Dan Ige, Dan Ige, is a lot better than. Not saying a lot better than Nate Lever, but he deserves better than being stuck on this kind of card.
Oh, for sure. He should have been on International Fight Week, and he shouldn't be fighting guys that are in Nate Landwehr's caliber, considering who he was just fighting 6 months ago.
Yeah. So this one to me, Zan, is clear Ige. Ige by mid to late finish or unanimous decision.
Agreed.
And then opening the card, Zan, it's Canada's own Marc-Andre Barriault, the former TKO champion, taking on the Alabama football former Alabama football national champion. Zan, I only ever get to bring the sound effect out when he fights. It's Eric, ya boy,
My boy.
Anders.
Yeah, Eric Anders going into enemy territory. How do you think that fight goes?
As you kind of alluded to with Mallet, I like Eric Anders. I want to lean to him, but I feel like the UFC is trying to set it up for a Canadian win.
Agreed.
And then, Zan, are there any notable prelim bouts that catch your eye?
Not really, but in me saying that, the prelims will probably be great because, of course, on cards like this, they always are when you least expect it.
I know. I mean, Nasruddin Imavov versus Chris Curtis. I mean, poor Chris Curtis. How is it that Chris Curtis is the headline prelim fight and not on the main card, considering that, like we just said, the kind of fights that are on the main card? I feel terrible for this man.
Oh, as you should. As you should.
Yeah, and I just mean, other than that, Zan, the fight before it, Miranda Maverick, because I like her, and I think her versus Jasmine Jessica Vicious is going to be a pretty cool fight to watch. Everything else,
Yeah, very, very meh card. It's definitely for the hardcores. Let's say that.
Yeah, it is definitely. I think that's the nicest way to put it, Zan. It is one for the hardcores. But Zan, if you want something else to watch, tonight on ESPN and ESPN Plus, PFL 4. Zan, I am hyped as all hell. And I'm not just saying that because I am now affiliated with the PFL. I also say that, Sam, because it is the second half of the PFL season. And hopefully, the kind of momentum we ended the first half on, because that PFL 3 card was all the bangers. Hopefully that momentum flies into here with the fourth card. It is, Zan, the second regular season fight for the featherweights and light heavyweights. It is the last chance for these guys to get into the playoffs. Your main event, Brandon Loughnane taking on Jesus Pinedo.
Yeah, you got to take the favorite here in Loughnane. He's trying to be the repeat champion. But as you know, PFL upsets, they tend to happen every so often. Jesus has the power to do it, but I just think Brandon Loughnane is going to be a step ahead of Jesus Pinedo the entire card, and he will win a decision in the main event of PFL 4, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, Zan. Brendan Loughnane is looking to have a repeat performance, be a repeat champion, get another $1 million, won 5 straight, 14 career knockouts. He would become just the 5th to win back-to-back championships. Pinedo is, I don't want to say a knockout artist, but 11 knockouts and 20 career victories. He's got most of his wins by knockout. Playoff scenarios. If Brendan Loughnane wins this fight, anyway, whether it's first round knockout, third round submission, split decision, no matter what, he's in the playoffs. It's win and you're in for Loughnane. For Pinedo, it's win or go home. Just to get it out there. Those are the playoff scenarios for these two. And yeah, I see Losene Zain. I mean, listen to his last 5, by the way, because I mentioned the last 5. Ryoji Kudo, Igo Husik, Chris Wade, Bubba Jenkins, Marlon Moraes. I know Marlon Moraes has had quite the skid, but him, Bubba Jenkins, Chris Wade, I think that's quite the path that he had to the 2022 championship and off to a pretty damn good start for his 2023 regular season. And if he handled all of them, I think he handles Pinedo, and I see probably about second or third round finish.
Yeah, I could see that as well. And Pinedo is just gonna have to hope that he catches something, because I think that's the only way he wins the fight.
Yeah, for Pinedo to win, he's got to find the power and he's got to land the shot on the button.
Without a doubt.
Just a couple other fights here to note, Zam. We got Movlid Kaibulev, the 2021 PFL featherweight champion, taking on Tyler Diamond. Zan, I like Tyler Diamond. He's a very exciting fighter, and you've got him taking on a former PFL champ. This one should be a good co-main.
For sure. Don't you agree with me that this is Tyler Diamond's last chance to show that he can be a superstar in this sport, though, in so many ways?
I mean, sort of. He didn't compete in the first stretch of the season, so his first time he's fighting, so he's got to have some form of stoppage win. I will say, Zan, for Tyler Diamond, he does need some form of stoppage, I think, to further, continue the kind of hype that he had been going in with. If you're Movlid Kaibulev, obviously, you want to fight to keep your season alive. In order to do that, Zan, he clinches a playoff spot. The only thing he can't do is he can't go to the judges. He gets any sort of stoppage, he's in.
Very
So
interesting.
you got two guys who are looking for a finish, Zan, which would make for a very exciting kind of fight.
Very interesting for sure. So it's winning or in, except it goes to a decision. Got it. Okay.
That being said, Zan, I feel like that the wrestling, I mean, it's going to be a wrestling battle, but I think Kaibulev's wrestling is going to be a little too much for Diamond. I'm going to go Kaibulev, Zan, but I think it goes to a decision at that point. I think you're going to have two guys who are going to be so desperate for submission. Are they basically going to screw each other up?
This is going to sound bold, but I think Diamond gets a stoppage upset.
If that happens, Zan, that could be a nominee for upset of the season.
Well said. Or even MMA upset of the year. You never know.
Potentially that as well. And then, Zan, light heavyweight feature bout, the final light heavyweight bout of the evening. It's going to feature a former finalist, I think a 2021 finalist, and Martin Hamlet taking on Sam K. Sam K. Last season fought as a heavyweight. He has now dropped down to light heavyweight. Let me find the playoff scenario. So Martin Hamlet got a first round finish in his first fight. And he's just going to be like Brendan Losene, any kind of win, decision, or finish. And Martin Hamlet will go into the playoffs. And for Sam K, it is win or go home to stay alive in the playoff race. Light heavyweight, by the way, one of the divisions that got quite a big shakeup. You could argue probably got the biggest kind of shakeup when it came to the suspensions of late.
For sure.
There's like only 3 guys who have points.
For sure. You got to give Martin Hamlet his due, and I think he gets a win. I think he wins late first, early second round.
Yeah. If you're Sam K, this is one of those fights, Zan, where I think K has got to. I'm going to agree with you. I think Martin Hamlet, you got to give him his credit. And this is I think, Zan, considering those suspensions, this is going to be his biggest opportunity to get back to the championship. I think this is a big opportunity, Zan, for him and Joshua Silveira to basically make their mark with the PFL and get to the championship fight. That being said, if you are Sam K, you gotta maybe use your wrestling, that your grappling, I mean, and basically you gotta out grapple Hamlet to a decision. I think that's Kay's best way to get the best way to get best way to get into stay alive at this point
Yeah, I don't think
and
I
impress.
don't I don't think he'll be able to do that, unfortunately. I think Hamlet controls the entire fight.
I could see that. All right. That is going to do it for this edition of the MMA Outsiders, episode 41. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get notified of everything here at the Empty the Bench Network, from our show, the MMA Outsiders, our special live streams that we do every week for the Ultimate Fighter Season 31, Team McGregor versus Team Chandler, so much more. Follow us across social media at MMA Outsiders ETB, as well as the network at ETB Network. If you are watching us on YouTube, there is a way you don't have to see Zain and I's ugly mugs. You can just go to Acast, the audio only platforms, Spotify, Apple, so much more to get the audio feed. If you are listening on the audio feed, make sure to check out the YouTube feed at youtube.com/ETV Network. And don't forget to go to etvpodcast.com for more information on the Empty the Bench Network and blogs from the hosts and so much more. That is Sam Bando. Once again, he is a staff writer at bjpen.com, Bellator Rankings Committee member. He is my buddy and co-host on this show. Give him a follow over at SamBando99. I am Tom Albano. Find my work at Fansided MMA. I will be with you on the PFL website for all the latest on the action that goes down tonight. And you can follow me at Thomas J. Albano. That will do it for us on episode 41 of the MMA Outsiders. Before we go, just want to give a quick shout out, and I want to give some life advice to everybody as we enter the June months. Be Joe Piper. And secondly, I want to also say, just give my best wishes to everybody in my home state of New York, and everybody around the Northeast, everywhere. Stay safe, and praying for all the safety in the world as a result of the wildfires and the after effects coming from Quebec. So that just about is going to do it. Zan, anything you want to add?
Yeah, very well said. And I also wanted to just shout it really quick. Any of the MMA media members that are in the space that are planning to attend Bellator 297 a week from tomorrow, I'm looking forward to seeing all of you. We'll have more on that in the coming days as episode 42 commences, it, if you will. But like Thomas said, prayers to everyone out east, and of course everyone who has been affected by the wildfires. We hope you are safe or get to safety as quickly as possible. With that being said, thank you again for spending your morning with us. We will be back with more MMA content next week as we will recap UFC 289, preview the Bellator card, and all of the other happenings that take place in and around combat sports. We will see you guys then. I'm Zan, he's Tom, and we will see you guys next week. Thank you again for listening.
Take care, everyone.